What about bread? Is bread the staff of life or the scourge of modern civilization? And the answer is bread has such a large spectrum now that you really can't say one or the other. We know from history that bread truly is the staff of life. Because when human beings were able to settle down, they were able to grow two grains, barley and wheat. They began to develop civilizations. They no longer had to be a nomadic people. They could go in the Crescent Valley, and that because of bread, they had to develop a calendar because they had to know when to plant bread, when to harvest bread. And because they had a calendar, because they had a reliable source of calories, they were able to form civilizations. They had permanent shelter. They didn't have to become wandering hunter-gatherers. Now I realize some of these ancestral people say, oh, the hunter-gatherers were much better than when we started having bread and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, but with the domestication of wheat and barley, we were able to develop storage so we didn't have times of famine. We were able to feed armies and be able to march. We were able to have time to develop art. We were able to develop a language, a written language. We were able to develop trade. But all of that changed in about 1850 plus. At that time, all of a sudden, the Industrial Revolution came, and starting later on, we developed ways to industrially make bread to where human hands didn't touch it. And it was white as white can be because people wanted white bread, because white bread was thought to be pure and natural and hygienic, and that's what they wanted. And then in the 1940s, they convinced bakers to start putting B vitamins in bread. And what that did was actually decrease in the United States two major diseases, pellagra and beriberi. Two nutrient deficiencies were cured by fortifying bread. And bread was even sold as a health product in the 1960s. How your children can grow 12 different ways with these vitamins and minerals. It was so egregious, the Federal Trade Commission sued Wonder Bread Company. Lost, sadly. We didn't start baking bread back again in the United States as a whole until the late 1980s. And we have the hippies to thank for that. Because the hippies, all of a sudden, all of these people in the 1960s started descending in San Francisco. These young kids, people my brother's age, descending in San Francisco and Haight-Ashbury with no food, no prospects, no jobs. They had to be fed. And so they started to learn to bake bread. Now, the type of bread they did was not this type. It was more this type. A whole grain, sourdough style of bread, which fed them and kept them satisfied for hours at a time. Ultimately, today, more whole grain bread is sold in the United States with a higher fiber content than this nonsense here, which was brought to my house by my son's parents. The bottom line is that saying all bread is bad is like saying all meat is bad. Clearly, a bison carcass that has been sitting out for 3 days rotting away is not as healthy for you as a fresh rack of lamb or a nice piece of salmon. Bread is the same way. So if you enjoy a good piece of bread like this, you'll find this is chewy. You'll find this has a lot of fiber. You'll find this has a lot of B vitamins naturally. And you'll find that it will last you a lot longer than this white stuff, which pretty much the more I handle it, the more it falls apart. Bread isn't all evil, and bread isn't all good. It's just bread. Now, clearly, you can't eat it if you have a wheat allergy. You can't eat it if you have celiac disease. Those are obviously exceptions. Those are like saying peanuts are good, but if you have a peanut allergy, don't eat it, all right? So, bread isn't all that bad. It was what caused us to have civilization. It allowed us to develop art. It allowed the Egyptians to develop pyramids. All right, if you want to find out more, I actually am putting together on my podcast, which is called Fork You, more information along with some cool pictures of ancient bread and ancient times. So if you like this information and more, like, follow, share.